What's up, guys? Kelly McKay here, aka HVAC Millionaire, right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell, hit the like button, and leave me a comment below. Today I wanted to talk to you about, it's an old military strategy, I believe. I didn't look up to see what the origin of this was, but it says, and I think Jocko says this, he says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so when you start growing your business and you add people to your company, if you don't have like the proper processes in place, what's going to happen, because I experienced it, is you're going to start having a bunch of callbacks. There's going to be, there's a handful of things, for instance, during the cooling season that tends to always create callbacks. And the top two things I can tell you without question is checking the refrigerant level and checking the filter. Those two things, how they're so stupid, like those have to be done no matter what. I think the problem that gets us into trouble is guys would go out and let's say we were just there 10 days ago to do a maintenance and something failed for some reason. And because they were just there, they didn't check the filter. Or maybe they're the ones who performed the maintenance and they didn't check the refrigerant level. No matter the reason, as long as we do those two things, and when I say check the refrigerant level, also superheat and subcooling, but if we check those two things and we always check the filter, that's going to solve a lot of callbacks that tend to happen. It's not going to solve all of them. There's other thorough things that have to be done to get way better and reduce to reduce your callbacks, basically. But one thing that I also would mention is it's really important to track callbacks because it could be a way higher number than you think. And so if you're not actually documenting these callbacks month after month, like week after week, month after month, every day, you could literally just have a whiteboard that says callbacks. I don't know if my marker will work. Hey, it does a little bit. Callbacks, right? Just put it on the whiteboard and then just mark one. Every time you get one, mark one. You could have the dispatchers do this, or if your dispatch software is capable, which if you have one, then it's going to be capable. So typically either tag it as a callback or mark it as a callback each call. That way you know that you can actually track what callbacks you're actually getting. So, but let's talk about the winter because that's where we are right now. We're in the fall, whatever. We're in the middle of winter. And so what are the common callbacks in winter? Well, it's typically not letting the unit run long enough, not taking a temperature rise. I'll bet you anything that it's filter as well during like different scenarios, like I mentioned earlier on the air conditioning side. But we have to stick with the furnace long enough and check the temperature rise to make sure that it's within specs, because oftentimes the unit will run just fine for 20 minutes before anything happens. So if we're not testing that regularly, it creates a lot of callbacks. So this is something that we always had to keep top of mind awareness with our team. So I'm just reminding you guys, if you are experiencing a bunch of callbacks, that it's imperative that we train on that and make sure that it's actually happening. Another thing is if you've got certain dispatch softwares will have an option for you to have a checklist, kind of like a quality control checklist for what needs to be done on every call. Because there's a handful of things that we really need to do on every call to really minimize our callbacks. So if we're doing those things in the order in which they're supposed to be done, then you'll have a lot less callbacks. But here's the problem is people will rubber stamp your checklist. So for instance, if you had a quality control checklist at the end of an install and people will just go through and mark it with, once they're done instead of actually testing these things. Well, they can do the same thing with service. We definitely experience some of that. The great thing about certain softwares is they will timestamp the time that each individual thing happened. So for instance, I would see at 3:28, the checklist was filled out. And then at 3:29, a credit card was accepted. Well, that means that it's highly likely that the checklist was just rubber stamped, just meaning they didn't even look at it. They just said, yep, 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 and then moved on. And it really becomes clear when you start having callbacks, because if you're following the process, you're not going to go back out and find that you've got a high temperature rise, for instance. If you did the sheet and you recorded your temperatures, your return temperature and your supply temperature. So if you're having a bunch of callbacks, these are the things where slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you slow down, do the calls thoroughly, and stop getting callbacks, then your revenue is going to increase. And you're also going to have happier customers, because it doesn't matter what kind of callback it is, even if it's a part that just randomly failed shortly after you had been there. That has nothing to do with you or anything that you tested. Maybe you tested it, like honestly tested something, tested fine, but just failed for whatever reason. It still leaves a negative thoughts, in the customer's mind. Like they just think that you didn't do your full job while you were there. Whether they verbally say that or not, they're probably thinking it. And so because those things will happen occasionally, it's best that we just do an extra thorough job on every single call, every day, all the time, and just minimize that and keep it to an absolute minimum. So that's all I got for you guys. Be sure to check your callbacks. Be sure to track them. Just write them down or tag them in your CRM software, your dispatch software. So do that. If you can clean that up, and you can also just take a percentage. So for instance, if you did 100 calls and you had 5 callbacks, well, that's going to be 5%. So if you had 10 callbacks, that's 10%. That's just a nice even round number to do that on, but do the math. Find out what the percentage is of callbacks. And then each month, do your best to lower that percentage. And that's just going to be by slowing down and doing a more thorough job. So that's it, guys. Talk to you later. Go make money. Boom.